Start the recording. My participants.
Muted.
All right.
No, it's not muted.
I'm about to put everybody on mute. So just let me know if you're able to see my screen or not. If you're able to see my screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. I'm gonna mute all. All right. It's 11 a.m., so let's get started. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. Jazakallah khair for joining us. Choti Khala just joined. Salam Choti Khala. She hasn't joined the audio just yet. So, and Maham just joined. Awesome. Okay. All right. And Maham will be, I'm assuming we'll get the audio shortly. Okay. Let's get started. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. Welcome to our third weekly Quran lecture. Today is November 27, 2016. And I'm going to get a little topical today because today's topic was going to be, inshallah, the topic of thankfulness and how to give thanks. We're becoming very topical in the sense that I asked Yusuf Mamu what he thinks my topic should be, and he made an excellent suggestion that we should remain a little bit topical because we just had Thanksgiving this past Thursday. So he said that we should cover the concept of what is thankfulness within Islam and how we give thanks, etc. So inshallah, that's what's going to be on the lecture today. It looks like everybody who is supposed to be joining has joined, so we can get started.
Sanabaji's got to join too.
Who?
Sanabaji.
Oh, Sanabaji just joined, so she's good. But it looks like she doesn't have audio yet, so... Well, she'll figure it out. This is not, inshallah. Okay. All right, so on the agenda today, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about, number one, what is thankfulness and what is thanklessness, and the Arabic equivalents of those two terms and what they mean. Then we're going to go into a little bit of detail after we give a definition of what is thankfulness and what is thanklessness. We're going to go into the details of how one can become thankful, how one gives thanks, how one remains thankful, and how does one show ingratitude and thanklessness. And during the course of this talk, I will also be covering what are the consequences of thanklessness and what are the benefits of being thankful. So that is going to be on the agenda today. So let's get started. So as usual, we're going to recite some verses from the Quran that are pertinent to the topic that we have discussed today or that we're going to discuss today. And I have chosen Surah Rahmaan. Surah Rahmaan is one of those surahs that is one of my favorite surahs in the Quran, and one of the Desi community's favorite surahs is because of the repetition of فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. And I remember growing up, it used to play on the television all the time with very beautiful recitation. So I'm going to recite the first few verses of Surah Rahmaan, and that's I will be referencing some other verses from the Quran as well. But those are the verses that I've chosen today. So first we're going to recite and we're going to do the translation. So let's get into that. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. الشمس والقمر بحسبان. والنجم والشجر يسجدان. والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان. ألا تطغوا في الميزان. وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان. والأرض وضعها للأنام. فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام. والحب ذو العصف والريحان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. After the recitation, let's go with the translation. Ar-Rahman, the most merciful. Allama al-Quran, taught the Quran. خلق الإنسان, created man. علمه البيان, and taught him eloquence, language, speech, etc. الشمس والقمر بحسبان, the sun and the moon move by very precise calculations. وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ, and the stars and trees prostrate. وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ, and the heaven he raised and imposed a balance, the balance. أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ, that you may not transgress within the balance. وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانِ, and establish weight in justice and do not make deficient the balance. وَالْأَرْضَ وَضَعَهَا لِلْأَنَامِ, and the earth he laid out for the creatures. فِيهَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَالنَّخْلُ ذَاتُ الْأَكْمَامِ, therein is fruit and palm trees having sheets of dates. وَالْحَبُّ ذُو الْعَصْفِ وَالرَّيْحَانِ, and grain having husks and scented plants. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, so which of the favors of your Lord would you deny, or would you both deny? Okay, so that takes us to through the recitation and the translation. So what is on the agenda today? The agenda was we were going to talk about what is thankfulness, what is thanklessness, how does one give thanks, and how does one show ingratitude, and what are the consequences of both. And we're going to try to talk as much as we can in the context of Surah Rahmaan. So what is thankfulness? Or what is thankfulness? In the Arabic language, the word for thankfulness or the word for gratitude is shukr, which means to be thankful, to be grateful, or to be, in the state of gratitude, What follows immediately from shukr is the word alhamd. That after you feel gratitude, then you're going to do hamd, or you're going to verbally thank the person, the entity, or whoever that has shown you the favor. And that is the word hamd, to actually thank with your tongue, but also to praise the one who has given. Meaning that not only say thank you, but to say good things or to praise the one who has given is immediately followed, and that's the meaning of alhamd. The opposite of this, the opposite of shukr, the opposite of gratitude is obviously thanklessness. But in the Arabic language, the opposite of shukr is actually kufr, or rejection. Now, typically when we say kufr, or when we think of kufr, we think of it in terms of the rejection of faith, or to reject Islam. But kufr also means rejection of the favor, of the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not just to deny faith, which faith is the biggest or the greatest bounty of Allah, but to deny any favor or any bounty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon his servants is also a form of kufr. Now, the bigger the bounty, the greater the kufr. The smaller the bounty, the smaller the kufr. There's minor kufr, there's major, etc. But this is not the kufr that, when we talk about the one that takes you outside the fold of Islam. This is the kind of kufr that a lot of us are guilty of when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us with something. And we do not acknowledge that favor, and we do not praise him. And basically we become thankless despite the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us that favor. So the opposite of shukr is kufr. And inshallah, we're going to go into details of that. Another form that kufr, or rejection, another word for kufr and rejection, or another form that it takes, is what is called istikbar, or pride, or giving oneself special privilege compared to other people or other creation of Allah, or thinking oneself higher compared to others, that I am somehow special, that I am somehow greater, that I am somehow deserving more than others, or I am somehow just, I'm better, I'm higher. Giving yourself, or being prideful of oneself. This is known as istikbar, or pride, and it is another form of kufr, or denial of the favors of Allah. And this is the form of kufr that the Iblis was guilty of when he refused to bow down in front of Adam, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the angels and by proxy Satan, Iblis, to bow down to Adam, and he refused. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the angels to bow down to Adam, to prostrate to Adam, and the angels did. But Iblis refused because he was prideful, istikbar, because he considered himself better, because he considered himself higher, because he was full of himself, is why he refused that command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he became a rejecter. So shukr and hamd go hand in hand. To acknowledge one's favor, to remember the favor that has been given, then to thank the person, the entity that has given you the favor, is alhamd. But then the opposite of these is kufr, or to deny that any favor has been done, and not thank the one who has favored, and or to think that somehow one is deserving of that favor in and of itself, or to become prideful or boastful of oneself and just think oneself higher than others, is the opposite of shukr, which is istikbar and kufr. And one of the ugly forms that this takes within us, within ourselves, within our communities, I've seen this among adults, is our thinking that our material possessions, what we own, is somehow our possession and that we deserve to do with what we have earned or what we have in our possession to do with as we please. Hey, this is mine. I can do whatever I want. It's my car. These are my children. This is my house. This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. Now, in colloquial language, it's no problem to claim something, to claim ownership. In fact, the entire Sharia is based on this contracts and ownership. But when we say Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen in Surah Al-Fatiha, which is the first verse of Surah Al-Fatiha, we acknowledge that ultimately ownership, praise, number one, praise, it belongs to Allah. Thanks belongs to Allah. But we say Rabbil Alameen means the Lord of the world, the King of the world, the owner of the world. Ultimately, and the worlds, plural, ultimately everything that we own, everything that's material, everything we possess belongs to Allah. So how is this ugliness, how does this ugliness, as this form of ingratitude seep into our lives? We think that our children, our houses, our material possessions are somehow ours, and we are free to do with them as we please. And I will go into details of this in just a second. But us thinking that our material possession is ours and that we own them and that we have a right to dispose of them, do with them as we please, is one form of istikbar and kufr with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not major, but thinking that this is somehow mine, that this is somehow earned, and I somehow earned this because I labored for it. That's how I earned my house. Okay, I got married. That's how I had my children. I paid for my phone. I paid for my car. This is mine. Now, a very simple introspection will reveal to you the fallacy in such thinking. Because it may be so that we have earned our houses. Perhaps it's a stretch to even say that we have somehow earned our children. We only brought them into this world. We did not create them. But even if given that, even if we say that you somehow earned your home or your car or your material possession or your wealth, it is a stretch to think that you completely earned it on your own. Reason being that in order for you to earn these things, you had to have some things in place before, and you had to use them in order to earn your material possessions. Meaning that if you got a job, you had to have hands, legs, limbs in order to get that job. If you didn't have a tongue, if you didn't have a good brain, if you didn't have your legs, your feet, your hands, if you didn't have the ability to speak, you would not have any of these things. Right? So you used your mental capacity, your physical capacity to get a job and to earn your material possession. Okay, we'll give you that. But what payment did you make? What payment did you make to earn your hands, your feet? What did you spend to earn your eyes, to earn your tongue, to earn your nose, to earn your body? Because you use these things to get that job. You use your brain to get that job. Yes, you use, but what payment did you make for these things? What payment did you make for your parents who brought you into this world? What payment did you make for the fact that you exist? These are all favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps reminding us that no, remember, I am Rabbul Alameen. I am the owner of the world, and ultimately everything belongs to me. And if you are somehow laboring under the impression or laboring under the misinformation that this somehow belongs to you, I will fix your problem. I will fix this problem in your head. Allah will fix this problem in your head upon death. You will have to leave all of this behind. Every single possession that you think is yours, you will have to leave behind. Ultimately, ownership belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I wanted to give that a quick side note to this problem of ascribing our material possession to ourselves and how we should think about it and how we should address it. So now let's get into how does one become thankful. Thankfulness, gratitude involves three things. Number one, you have to have the feeling of gratitude. You have to acknowledge that something has been given. You have to appreciate it. You have to understand it, which is an example that I just gave just a second ago. Thinking that our material possessions are somehow ours, when we have to acknowledge that we may have done something to acquire our material possessions, but we did not do anything to acquire our brains, our eyes, our hands, our parents. These things were given to us. So we must first acknowledge within our heads. We have to think. We have to acquire the feeling of gratitude. We have to understand and appreciate within ourselves that we have been favored. And I will go into detail how to acquire the feeling of gratitude. Number two, we then have to, after we acknowledge amongst ourselves, within ourselves, that we have been favored, then we have to give thanks, meaning we have to say thank you. We have to say it with our tongues. We have to say it with our lips. That somebody, something, and in this particular instance, what we're talking about is giving thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to acknowledge with our tongues that Allah has favored us. And by extension, we have to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. We have to thank Him, which is the two meanings of alhamd. We have to thank Allah and we have to praise Him. That thank you, and we have to praise Him for Him giving us that favor. And finally, number three, which is we have to thank by action. We have to act thankful. Meaning that once we have acknowledged in our minds the thanks, once we have said it with our tongues, the final level of thankfulness, the final level of gratitude is to do it with our limbs and to show it with our actions. And what does that mean? We have to use what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us in accordance with His wishes, which is the act of gratitude. So number one, we acknowledge it within our hearts. Number two, we say it with our tongues. And number three, we show it with our actions. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us our eyes to see with, we should avoid seeing that which Allah has forbidden. If Allah has given us ears, we didn't earn our ears. We didn't earn our hearing capacity. Many people in the world are blind. Many people in the world are deaf. It's very possible we could have been created this way. It's not like I went to school for hearing. It's not like I went to some college to see. It's not like I got a job and that's how I earned my eyes. That's not what happened. It's a gift. I didn't earn this. But if it is a gift, then we must acknowledge that this gift must be utilized according to the wishes of the gift giver. Imagine this, that if a parent gives a child a laptop to study with, a computer, many of you are listening to this lecture on some kind of electronic device, and perhaps many of you are using it on the very device that your parents has provided so that your education, your communication becomes easy for you. But imagine that you use that phone. What your parent gave you that phone for was to make your life easy, to make your studies easy. You use it in the opposite. You use that phone to skip school, to waste time. Then you are being thankless to your parents for providing you that phone, because you are not using that phone. You're not using the technology. You're not using the gift according to the wishes of the gift giver. Similarly, the act of thankfulness involves that whatever we have been given, we use it according to the wishes of the one who has given the gift. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, we use what He has given according to His wishes. If He has given us eyes, we use the eyes according to what He wishes them to be used for. And we don't use the eyes to disobey Him. And this is the ultimate betrayal that mankind seems to commit every time. We cannot disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except by using what He has given us in the first place. Meaning the only way we could disobey Allah is with our bodies. But at the end of the day, who gave us our bodies? It is Allah. So it is impossible for us to disobey Allah without somehow using what Allah has provided. And this is a kind of betrayal, a kind of thanklessness to the one who has provided. So those are the three levels of gratitude. Number one, we should feel gratitude. Number two, we should pronounce it with our tongue. And number three, we should show it in our actions by utilizing the gifts according to the wishes of the gift giver. And thanklessness, incidentally, also encompasses the opposite of these three. Ingratitude, number one, is to not even feel, to not even acknowledge in your heart that you have been blessed. I haven't been given anything. My life sucks. This is hard. SSDD. Life is awful. I don't want to be here. This negativity that permeates our hearts, our psyches, this is something that we internalize in our brains, that somehow life is awful, that somehow life is hard, that somehow this is just awful. This is a form of thanklessness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that involves our heart. And then it immediately and essentially translates into things that we say, right? God, I hate my mom. My children don't listen to me. Oh, my boss sucks. These things will come out on our tongues essentially because in our heart of hearts, we do not acknowledge that A, we've been given a child, that B, we've been given a parent, that C, we have a job. Yes, we might have difficulty with our boss, but tell me, how many people do you know who are unemployed? How many children live in this world without parents? They're orphans. They have no one to take care of. And how many couples in this world are childless? They don't have that within their lives. What do we focus on? We focus on the negative. We focus on what we don't have. And this problem, this disease, I've seen a lot in our younger generation, right? Instead of being thankful for the gifts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for what has been given, we constantly and consistently focus on that which we don't have. Oh, I have the iPhone 6. I wanted the 6 Plus. I have the 6 Plus, but I have the 64 gig version. I wanted the 128 gig version. No, I have the 128 gig version, but it's on AT&T. I wanted it on Verizon. Okay, now it's on Verizon. Okay, but I wanted it with the iWatch. The iWatch. What about the iWatch? I don't have the iWatch. And this complaining, this sense of ingratitude permeates the young mind until they drive themselves crazy, thinking that somehow material possessions will make them better, will make them happy. Trust me, if you cannot enjoy what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided you, more material possessions will not bring you happiness. Thinking that the next iPhone will somehow bring you more happiness, thinking that somehow the next iPad or the next car or the next phone or the bigger house or the bigger car or whatever have you will somehow bring you happiness is the ultimate fallacy. You have already been blessed so much. You are already blessed so much. You already have so much to be thankful for that if you don't see it, trust me, the next material possession will not bring you joy. It will not bring you contentment. You will enter what I like to call the rat race. And what's the rat race? Each rat running after the next piece of cheese, thinking that that next piece of cheese will somehow bring you happiness. That somehow that next phone will bring me happiness. That somehow a bigger house will bring me happiness. That somehow the next car will bring me happiness. Somehow the next fashion statement will bring me more happiness. No, it will not. And the reason it will not, this lack of thanks, this thanklessness that permeates your psyche will not go away with material possession. You are already so blessed that if you just think about it, you cannot help but be overwhelmed with what Allah has provided us. It is simply impossible to remain thankless just by being alive. The fact that we exist, the fact that we are breathing, the fact that we can talk, the fact that you are listening to this talk, the fact that you are reading the Quran, the fact that you have eyes, the fact that you have ears, the fact that you have a body, the fact that you have clothes, the fact that you have shelter overhead, the fact that there's a hot lunch waiting for you, the fact that you are secure amongst yourselves, you're not in any immediate danger. These are such great gifts that if you just thought about it for a second and thought about the people who don't have these gifts, you cannot help but be overwhelmed by a sense of gratitude. And if you cannot acknowledge that, trust me, the next iPhone, the next phone, the next car, the next piece of cloth will not bring you happiness. Sorry. Because, and there is evidence of this, we see this amongst our lives, we see this in real life. Who are the most popular, the wealthiest, the most talented, the best looking people in the world? Who are they? They're probably, you would think like the Hollywood types, right? The singers, the actors, the producers, the Hollywood types. They are rich, they are famous, they are good looking. They quote unquote have everything, right? Michael Jackson was worth, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars. But he had not an ounce of happiness in his life, not an ounce of thanklessness. He survived on a cocktail of drugs that eventually killed him. Do you think he lacked material possessions? No, he lacked thankfulness. He just couldn't thank for what he had. He thought that the next surgery will make him better. And if you think that the next material possession will somehow bring you gratitude, I have news for you. No, it won't. Okay. Number one, we talked about the 3 stages of gratitude, right? To feel gratitude, to say it with your tongue, and to acknowledge it with your deeds, and to do it with your deeds. How does one acquire this feeling of gratitude? How does one feel gratitude? How does one acquire this feeling? How do I acknowledge that at least? Because that's the first phase, right? Without accepting it in your heart, it will not show up on your tongue. We read about some of the favors, and I encourage you to read Surah Rahmaan and to reflect on Surah Rahman in your own time. We did like 7 verses today. In Surah Al-Rahman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts to count for people, starts to remind them of the favors that He has given them. And if we ponder over the meaning of Surah Ar-Rahman, one verse at a time, you will realize what a blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created around us. Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, has taught the Quran. The greatest bounty of Allah is that He taught you. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ. Next, He created you. عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ. He taught you eloquence. You are a thinking creature. You're not just an animal surviving on instinct. You are eloquent. Now, the next few verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually gets into how this universe is created and how the universe supports human life. الشمس والقمر بحسبان. The sun and the moon move by precise calculations. The trees and the stars are in prostration. The heavens He raised and imposed with balance. Now, what does this mean? Whenever you get a chance, I want you to research this concept. The concept of the fine-tuning that exists within this universe or exists on this planet Earth in order for human beings to exist. There are numbers in the scientific community, they're called the fundamental numbers. They are the basic numbers, the basic scientific ratios that in order for this planet to exist, in order for this planet to support life, in order for us to be here and talking about us being here, what needs to happen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is slowly pointing us in that direction in Surah Ar-Rahman. He is saying that the sun and the moon move in precise calculations. Meaning that if the earth didn't exist in the third orbit, the third planet from the sun, it would be too cold or too hot. If it was the second planet from the sun, it would be too hot. If it was the fourth planet from the sun, it would be too cold. The earth has to be the third planet from the sun in order for it to support life. The sun and the moon both move in a precise coordinates, precise calculations in order for us to exist, in order for us to be. He created man, but then He also is pointing us that, look, the sun and the moon move in precise calculations so that you may be alive. And that He created the heavens and He imposed a perfect balance, imposed balance in the heavens. Whenever you get a chance, I want you to research this concept. Google it. It's called the fine-tuning argument. What is the fine-tuning argument? In order for us to exist, there are 6 precise numbers that if they weren't precisely set exactly they are, we would not be alive today. Meaning that one of the precise numbers is the ratio of the strong and weak nuclear forces. That if it was off just by the tiniest fraction, the material world couldn't exist. Atoms could not come together to combine and to make matter. It just wouldn't be possible. There are other details of the fine-tuning argument or the 6 numbers that I won't go into. But I want you to research this concept, how it's like a mountain is balanced on a needle in order for us to exist on this planet, for us to be here. This is one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing our attention or giving our attention, that look, in order for you to exist, the moon, the earth, the sun, they had to be in precise locations in order for you to be here. In order for the earth to be, Jupiter, a planet that is enormous, has to be right next door in order to pull large asteroids from destroying the earth. If Jupiter wasn't around, the earth wouldn't be around. Keep going. And established a weight and justice, so don't make deficient the balance. He's telling us Allah has created balance within the rest of the universe, and He expects you to also maintain balance, meaning do justice. And on the earth He laid out for all creatures, and therein there are fruit trees and palm trees and date trees and grain and scented plants. And which of your Lord's favor will you deny? Think and ponder each and every one of these. If there were no scented plants, we would not exist. If there were no honeybees, human beings would not exist. If there were no sun, no moon, we would not exist, because the Earth's oceans are very much tied to the moon. We would all drown. All these acknowledgements are in Surah Rahmaan, telling us one after another, this is a favor, this is a favor, this is a favor, this is a favor. Ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, so which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? Meaning that even if you just simply exist, forget about the rest of it. You have food to eat, you have shelter, you have security. Even if in order for you just to exist, you have to have so much bounty of Allah upon you that it is possible for you to deny it, but it is not possible for you to acknowledge what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. You can be thankless because you can deny with one fell stroke, God has not favored me, and say, you know what, that God has never really done anything for me. But what they don't realize is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored us enormously and incredibly. So which of the favors of our Lord will you deny? The more you ponder what it takes for you to be here. Just the other day I was pondering what it takes for me to be here. If it hadn't been for the sacrifices of my grandfather, both my grandfathers, may Allah have mercy upon them, I would not be here today. If they hadn't worked hard, incredibly hard, I would not be here. I would not be who I am today. If they hadn't raised a good family, I would not be who I am. If they hadn't practiced Islam, I wouldn't be a Muslim today. In order for me to be who I am today, what had to transpire before? What circumstances had to be? Surah Rahmaan goes into a lot of detail, all the different ni'mah, all the different gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has showered upon His creation. And I want you to, this is a homework for you guys. Number one, ponder amongst yourself what it takes for you to be alive. Your heart. Oh. We're going to take a quick break while there is a Dhuhr prayer. Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. 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 الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. Okay, that's the end of the azan for Dhuhr. Inshallah, after this, I'm going to go. But a few final thoughts. So we talked about how to acquire the feeling of gratitude. Then we also have to acknowledge how do we praise and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that we do, alhamdulillah, 5 times a day anyway. And at least 15 times a day, because in Jummah, remember on Friday prayer, there's 2 instead of 4 fara'id. It's 17 times we have to recite Surah Al-Fatih. At least 17 or 15 times, depending on the day. Surah Al-Fatiha, in which we acknowledge all praise with our tongues, that all praise, all thanks is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without you thinking, without you acquiring this feeling and pondering what it takes for you to be here, and what the gifts, in order for you to exist, in order for you to be here, without that, you will not be able to acknowledge these gifts with your tongue. And finally, the rest of the Quran is a guide for you to use the gifts that Allah has provided you in the manner that pleases Him. So use this gift, use your eyes, look at this, don't look at this. Use your feet, use this, don't do this with your feet, don't do this. You have a tongue, say the truth, don't tell falsehood. Say good things about people, don't backbite. You have wealth, don't consume interest, give charity. All these gifts, the rest of the Sharia is built upon this one concept, to use the gifts of Allah according to His wishes. That if we use them according to His wishes, we're being thankful. And if we don't use them according to His wishes, we're being thankless. It's a form of ingratitude. Now, what are some of the consequences of gratitude? And what are some of the consequences of ingratitude? One of the verses that it's in Surah Ibrahim, and I think it's verse number 8, maybe 7, I don't remember off the top of my head. But the verse goes as follows. وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِن كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. And the translation is, and remember when your Lord proclaimed that if you are thankful, I will surely increase you in favor. But if you are thankless, if you are kafartum, if you deny, then my punishment, indeed my punishment is severe. There's no then, just indeed my punishment is severe. In this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that if we are thankful, if we use His gifts according to His wishes, it is His promise that He will give us more gifts. He will give us more. He will increase us. But if we don't, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not promise a punishment. He just warns of a punishment. Meaning that it is guaranteed that if you use Allah's gifts according to His wishes, you will be given more. But if you don't use them according to His wishes, He is warning of a severe punishment, but He is not promising. because he is merciful, because he is forgiving. He's just saying, I'm warning you, my punishment is severe. But the first part is a promise. The first part is a give and take. You do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do with what he has given you, he will give you more. But if you don't, understand that his punishment is severe. He's not promising punishment in return. He is promising more in return for gratitude, but he is not promising punishment for ingratitude because he is merciful to his servants. Because we all, at some point or another, are ungrateful for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. We say things, we do things that show a sign of ingratitude. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, had he promised this, then he would have taken us to account immediately. He would have punished us immediately, but he does not. In his mercy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not promise punishment for ingratitude. He just warns of it. Now, some final notes on what are going to be some of the consequences if you become grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are some of the other positive benefits if you are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? One thing that is definitely is going to happen for you is that no matter what your circumstance, depression will not touch you. Because you already know that in order for you to even have taken one breath upon this planet, what it took for you to be here, you will know that even if it's all over tomorrow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you so much that even if it all goes away tomorrow, a depression or a depressive thought will never touch you. The rest of your life will be spent in tranquil thoughts, in thankfulness. Number two, you will be able to enjoy fully what you already possess, what you already have. Because we are all already incredibly wealthy. A lot of people think that they don't have enough money. I want you to think of all the things that you would not trade for money. Think of those things that you would not trade for money. And it could be anything. Would you trade your parents for money? Somebody offers you $1 billion and says, here's $1 billion, but your parents will die if you take this $1 billion. Would you take it? What about your sense of hearing? Would you take $1 billion and become a deaf mute? Would you take $1 billion for your eyesight? How about your taste? How about your legs? How about one leg? How about one foot? How about one arm? How about your brain? How many people in this world do you see who there is something wrong with them and they can't think correctly? They are born slightly deficient in their head. Would you trade $1 billion for a clear mind, for a clear thinking mind? These gifts are already infinitely worthwhile. And if you acknowledge that you are infinitely gifted already, you will be able to fully enjoy whatever that you have already, and you will live a fulfilled and happy existence. And finally, you will feel a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you have never felt. No matter what your consequences, no matter what your situation, it'll become inconsequential to you how you are living. If you have a job, you're happy. If you don't, you're happy. If you have children, you're happy. If you don't, you're happy. If you are sleeping, you're happy. If you're awake, you're happy. You're just happy. You are already so gifted that you will feel this connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will feel this sense of gratitude permeate throughout your life. But I'm afraid the opposite also is true. if you don't acquire the feeling of gratitude by pondering what Allah has given, if you don't verbally thank Him, and if you do not use what He has given you in service to Allah, if you do not give or if you do not use what He has given you in service to Him, then the opposite is true as well. You will be depressed, thinking that somehow the next material possession will somehow satisfy you. No, it will not. You will go into more and more depression. You will not be able to live a full, happy, enjoyable, fulfilled life. You will not be happy with yourself. You will not be happy with your circumstances, no matter what your circumstances. You could be the richest, the most popular, the best looking person in the world, and you will still be angry. You will still be angry. You will still be depressed, upset. And finally, your connection with the divine, your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be severed, which is the ultimate loss. So that is it for today. I am going to unmute everybody, and as soon as I unmute you, you will be able to talk, and then everybody will be able to hear what you're saying. So any comments, questions, concerns, and any suggestions, I would love suggestions for continuing forward for next, because this week's lecture was suggestion from Yusuf Mamu, Chuchu Mama, and thank you for this suggestion. If you have any suggestions for next week, I would also like to hear them. Jazakallah khair. I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to unmute everybody for your comments. And now everybody is unmuted.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम फैसल बेटा। हाँ, माशाल्लाह ने बहुत अच्छा बताया आपने, और हमारे साथ वाकई यही मसला है कि हम जितनी हमारे पास चीज़ें हैं हम उनका शुक्र अदा नहीं करते, और जो चीज़ नहीं है, जो एक छोटी सी चीज़ नहीं है, जो कि किसी रीज़न की जैसे ही हमें अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला से उस चीज़ से रोका हुआ होता है, तो हम उसके लिए बस मरे चले जाते हैं कि ये नहीं है चीज़, ये चीज़ नहीं है, जो कि हमें फिर वही अगर हम जो चीजें अल्लाह सुब्हानहू तआला ने हमें अता की हैं, जो नेमतें उसने अता की हैं, उस पे शुक्र अदा करना शुरू कर दें, तो हम ये भूल जाएं कि हमें कोई फलानी चीज नहीं मिली, और जिस पर जो चीज नहीं मिली उस पर भी अगर शुक्र अदा करें तो वो भी हमारे लिए अच्छा ही है। जज़ाकल्लाह खैर।
I want to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay, I take an astronomy class in the high school. It's only half year, which kind of stinks, but I take it. And my teacher, he talks about how Earth is the only only planet that's it's sustainable for liquid water, frozen water, like gas. It works for everything. So like he thinks it's it just happens, like it's just by chance. But obviously, I know that like Allah has put us here for like a reason, and like that. Because he created the sun and the moon and the earth in such a way that we are able to live in the earth. And he's like, oh yeah, it just happened that like the earth is here and we're able to live with water and stuff like that. But obviously, like that's not true. And I don't say anything about like what I believe, because that's obviously like biased. But it just
let me give you a quick history of this and how this thought came about, right? So basically the original thought in, I'm going to say maybe the 60s, the 70s, even through the 80s, was that when they discovered how vast this universe is, how big this universe is, forget about the universe, just our galaxy, hundreds and billions of stars. And then within the universe, there are hundreds and billions of galaxies. That they said that, well, if there are hundreds of billions of stars and hundreds of billions of galaxies, there should be hundreds of billions of planets that should be able to support life, right?
Yeah.
So nearly every star, nearly every binary star or trinary star system should have at least one or two planets that should be able to support life. So they said, okay, you know what? There should be plenty of extraterrestrial life. There should be life on other planets, and we should be able to observe it. And so they started a project, and the project is still going. It's called the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI, S-E-T-I. And they looked for this, and the more they searched, the more they discovered that in order for this planet, Earth, to support life, the balance is so delicate that if even one of those fractions, even one slight of slight calculation of a planet could not support life. So it went from quintillions of planets to perhaps billions of planets to millions of planets to thousands of planets who could support life. And eventually the number shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And people are thinking, hey, you know what? Perhaps Earth is the only planet out of the billions and hundreds of billions of planets that we thought could support life. Earth is probably the only one that actually can. In order for Earth to support life, Jupiter has to be next door. Without Jupiter, Earth, we would not be here. There would be a catastrophic collision with a passing asteroid every few decades, and it would be like thousands of atomic bombs falling from the sky every 10 years. And we wouldn't exist. Jupiter has to be right next door. We have to be the third planet from the sun. The fourth planet or the second planet cannot support life. We have to spin on our own axis, meaning if the planet is not spinning on its own axis, if one face is always facing the sun and the other face is always facing away from the sun, life could not exist. The planet has to be spinning on its own axis, and the planet has to be spinning in an elliptical orbit so that there would be summer and there would be winter and it would be a year long. Without that, life couldn't exist. Without honeybees, life couldn't exist. Without the strong and weak nuclear force being in perfect balance, life couldn't exist. I want you to do this research on this topic, the 6 numbers, or it is also called the fine-tuning argument. And it becomes ridiculous. Math starts to fail. How infinitesimally small the possibility of life existing on this planet at random is. Somebody who says that this is all at random, just tell them, have you heard of the fine-tuning argument? Do you know what fine-tuning is? And it'll give them pause. Any other questions, comments? Okay, if that is it, Jazakallah khair, everyone. We will again resume next week at the same time. I am looking for suggestions for next week's topic. If you have any topics, I email everybody. You can email me back on that, or you can tell me now what you think that my next topic should be. I would really appreciate it. All right, if that is it, Jazakallah khair, everybody. Inshallah.
हाँ फैसल अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मेरी आवाज आ रही?
जी वालेकुम सलाम, चुचुमा आ रही है?
हाँ बेटे, वो मैंने अनम्यूट किया। अच्छा, मेरा ख्याल था अगले वीक के लिए ना टॉपिक आप, अगर मेरी सजेशन है उसका रखें, हया का, इस्लाम में हया का जो तस्वुर है, मतलब ये जो हमारे बच्चे यंग हैं, बच्चे, इनको किस तरह से कन्विंस किया जाए कि हम किस तरीके से, हमारी लाइफ किस तरीके से डिफरेंट है यहाँ जो लोग बच्चे रहते हैं उनसे। हमारा मतलब अगर मेरी बेटी है तो उसका मतलब बॉयफ्रेंड का कोई कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है, अगर बेटा है तो यहाँ पर गर्लफ्रेंड का कोई कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है, इसके क्या कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस होते हैं और इसकी क्या बेहतरी होती है, ये बड़ा अच्छा रहेगा और हमारे बच्चों को पता लगेगा।
ठीक है, नो प्रॉब्लम मॉम, लेकिन I don't have a problem giving that topic. But I would recommend the youngest audience members probably stay away from that lecture. Because then, if we're going to talk about, then deen mein, jise kehte hain, deen mein haya nahi hoti, I will go into details of the topics that are slightly, that might be a little bit over the head of the extremely young audience.
तो आपकी क्या सजेशन होगी, उसमें क्या करना चाहिए हमें?
So, for example, what is it that, what is involved in being alone with the opposite gender? What is how? Because without that, I cannot do justice to the teenagers.
Okay.
Because if I keep it way too PG for the children, for the younger ones, then I will be robbing the teenagers of what they need.
Okay. So we can plan a separate session for these kids like this, right? So that will be a good idea, huh?
Yeah. If you guys think, and Khala, I'm asking for your suggestion, Razia Khala, do you think that that topic, because when it comes to sexual relations, when it comes to things like that, I would be remiss not to address those topics to the teenager, but it might be a little over the head for the babies. What do you think?
अब सारी फैमिलीज में मेरे ख्याल जो टीनेजर्स हैं वो बड़े ही हैं, सिवाय एक मेरे ख्याल शायद अरिया जरा से छोटी है वो है, तो उसके अलावा हम मेरे ख्याल सारे बाकी फैमिलीज में सब बड़े बड़े ही हैं। सना के घर में शायद आयजा के लिए शायद वो टॉपिक थोड़ा सा वो हो, तो नेक्स्ट हाँ आतिफ के लिए के घर में उसके हुजाफा के लिए हो सकता है ये थोड़ा सा वो हो, लेकिन मेरा ख्याल है तुम अगर इस चीज को जरा सा इस तरह से कर लो तो अगर वो बच्चे सुन भी रहे होंगे तो फिर भी होपफुली के उन लोगों को भी समझ में आएगी। और
ठीक है, मैं देखता हूँ, मैं क्योंकि जहां तक मैंने जब भी देखा है ना, क्योंकि मुझे एक इख्तलाफ जो कि अपने उलमा से रहा है वो ये है कि ऐसे टॉपिक्स पे उस तरीके से उस लैंग्वेज पे बात नहीं करते जो इस पे आजकल टीनेजर्स बात करते हैं। ठीक है, आप ओवरली शाय हो जाते हैं तो फिर आप वो लैंग्वेज नहीं बोल रहे होते जो कि उनकी समझ में आएगी, जिसकी वजह से इट विल नॉट रेजोनेट विद देम।
सही बात।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम प्रोफेसर।
वालेकुम सलाम खाला।
हाँ बेटा, मैं यही कहना चाह रही थी कि मेरे घर में भी जो बिलाल है ग्रेड 6 में है, लेकिन वो सूनर वो स्टार्ट कर देगा ये सब कुछ, तो आई एम ओके विद दैट। Ihan can go inside and just do something else. He doesn't have to listen all those stuff, but I'm okay with that.
ठीक है, चलें ठीक है। तो फिर what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the decision up to the parents if you want the younger ones to be there or not. That's up to you. But I don't want to shortchange the teenager or the kids. If you think that the topic will be beneficial, bring your child, no problem. But I am going to talk about, I'm not going to hold back in that talk. That's all I'm saying.
ठीक है बेटे, ठीक है, जज़ाकल्लाह।
Jana, ठीक है everybody. Jazakallah khair for coming. Inshallah, I will see you guys next week. Okay?
अल्लाह हाफ़िज़।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातहू। अच्छा फैसल
जी
भाई, हुस्ना भी होगी, यानी मेरा मतलब है कमरे में होगी, वो कह रही है